The mockery begins the grand observation deck of Station Omega-9, gleamed with polished metal and crystalline viewports. Delegates from 47 species gathered for the annual Galactic Trade Summit, their attention drawn to the massive docking bay below. Ships of every imaginable design floated in their assigned berths. The Zephyrian cruisers shimmered like liquid silver, their hulls reflecting light in mesmerizing patterns. The Korthan Empire's warships bristled with weapons, each vessel a testament to aggressive military doctrine. The Velic's collective's bio-ships pulsed with bioluminescent energy. Living vessels grown rather than built. Then came the human contribution to the summit's defense fleet. The ISS Steadfast emerged from the transit lane, and conversation in the observation deck stuttered to a halt. The vessel moved with agonizing slowness, its bulk dwarfing even the largest Korthan battleships. Rust-colored patches marked its hull where ancient armor plating had oxidized over decades of service. The ship's design spoke of another era, blocky and utilitarian, with none of the elegant curves favored by modern naval architects. Ambassador Vex of the Zephyrian Confederation turned to his aid, his translucent features twisting in what might have been amusement. His species communicated through color shifts in their skin, but he had learned to speak Galactic common for occasions like this. The colors rippling across his face told a different story than his diplomatic words. "The humans sent museum peace," Vex said, his voice carrying across the observation deck, despite his attempt at discretion. "Perhaps they misunderstood the invitation. We requested warships, not historical artifacts." Laughter rippled through the assembled delegates. Commander Vex of the Korthan Empire, a towering figure with 4 arms and chitinous armor, crossed his upper limbs in a gesture of dismissal. His species had conquered 17 star systems through lightning warfare and overwhelming firepower. They measured military worth in speed and striking power. "Look at how it moves," Vex rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. "My grandfather's cargo hauler showed more speed. The humans insult this summit by bringing such a relic. They should have stayed home rather than embarrass themselves." The Steadfast continued its approach, oblivious to the mockery. Docking clamps extended from the station, but the human ship was so massive that special reinforced berths had been prepared weeks in advance. The docking process took 47 minutes, a duration that had several species checking their chronometers in disbelief. Most military vessels completed docking in under 5 minutes. Down in the diplomatic quarters, Captain David Cross reviewed the security briefings for the summit. He was a man in his late 40s, with premature silver threading through his close-cropped hair. A scar ran from his left temple to his jawline, a reminder of a boarding action 15 years prior. His uniform was meticulously maintained, but showed signs of long service. Much like his ship, his first officer, Commander Maria Santos, stood by the viewport watching the station's activity. She was younger, in her early 30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her family had served in human defense fleets for 3 generations, and she carried that legacy with quiet pride. "They're laughing at us again," Santos said without turning from the window. "I counted 15 different species in the observation galleries, all watching our approach." "Let them laugh," Cross replied, his attention focused on the tactical displays. "How's the crew settling in?" "Engineering team is already in the reactor spaces. Chief Patel says she wants to run full diagnostics while we're docked." Lieutenant Shao has security teams posted at all access points. Dr. Kenji is setting up the medical bay for summit emergencies. Santos finally turned to face her captain. Sir, why do we keep accepting these assignments? Every summit, every joint operation, it's the same reaction. They see the steadfast and immediately dismiss us. Cross looked up from his datapad, his gray eyes thoughtful. Because someone has to do the work nobody else wants to do. Fast ships chase glory. Heavy ships hold the line. We're not here to impress anyone, Commander. We're here to do our job. The summit's opening ceremonies proceeded with diplomatic precision. Species representatives delivered speeches about cooperation and mutual prosperity. Trade agreements were signed. Defense pacts were renewed. Through it all, the human delegation remained quietly professional, drawing little attention beyond the occasional dismissive glance. On the third day of the summit, alarms shattered the diplomatic calm. Every security station in Omega-9 lit up simultaneously. The station's AI coordinator, a neutral system maintained by the Galactic Council, broadcast an emergency signal across all channels. Critical alert. Mining colony Helios Prime under attack. Rogue AI fleet detected. Estimate 400 hostile vessels. Colony population 3 million sentients. Immediate military response required. The diplomatic halls erupted into chaos. Helios Prime was a critical resource hub, its deep space mining operations supplying rare elements to half the quadrant. 3 million workers from dozens of species lived and worked in the orbital habitats surrounding the mining operations. The loss of Helios Prime would be an economic catastrophe, but more importantly, it would be a humanitarian disaster on an unprecedented scale. Fleet. Admiral Korath of the Galactic Defense Initiative took command of the situation. The Thornian commander was a veteran of the border wars, respected across species lines for his tactical brilliance. His species resembled bipedal reptiles, with scaled skin that shifted colors based on emotional state. Right now, those scales showed the deep crimson of combat readiness. All available warships prepare for immediate deployment, Korath ordered. We need speed above all else. Helios Prime is 6 hours away at maximum FTL velocity. Every minute we delay costs lives. 23 warships volunteered for the Rapid Response Fleet. Zephyrian cruisers capable of 0.95 light speed. Quarthan destroyers that could unleash devastating firepower in seconds. Velix bioships that regenerated damage as fast as they took it. The Corellian Ascendancy contributed their phase ships, vessels that could shift partially out of normal space to avoid weapons fire. Captain Cross stood and cleared his throat. The steadfast volunteers for the defense fleet. The tactical center fell silent. Admiral Korath's scales flickered through several colors, finally settling on a pattern that suggested confused irritation. Captain Cross, Korath said carefully, your ship's maximum velocity is 0.35 light speed. The response fleet will reach Helios Prime in 6 hours. Your vessel would require 17 hours to cover the same distance. By the time you arrived, the battle would be long finished. Nevertheless, Admiral, the steadfast volunteers. Cross's voice remained level, professional, carrying no hint of offense at the implicit rejection. Commander Vex rose from his position. his forearms gesturing in the Corthan equivalent of dismissive laughter. "Admiral, do not waste time with human pride. They have one ancient ship that moves like a sleeping whale. Let us take our real warships and handle this crisis. The humans can guard the station while we fight the real battle." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled military commanders. Ambassador Vex added his voice to the chorus. "Captain Cross means well, but Commander Vex speaks truth. This situation requires speed and modern tactics. Perhaps humanity should observe this operation and learn how contemporary naval warfare is conducted." Cross met the ambassador's gaze without flinching. "With respect, Ambassador, humanity has been conducting naval warfare since before your species achieved spaceflight. We simply do it differently." "Differently?" Vex challenged. "You mean slowly and with outdated equipment. Admiral Korath, I formally request that the human vessel remain at the station. They would be a liability in combat." Korath's scales shifted through several patterns. The Admiral was caught between diplomatic necessity and tactical reality. The humans were technically equal members of the galactic community, but their military contribution had always been questionable. Their ships were slow, their tactics conservative, their technology seemingly decades behind current standards. "Captain Cross," Korath said finally, "I appreciate your courage, but Commander Vex raises valid concerns. Your ship cannot reach the battle in time to contribute meaningfully. I'm assigning the Steadfast to station defense. The Rapid Response Fleet will handle Helios Prime." Cross nodded slowly. "Understood, Admiral. Permission to review the tactical situation independently? Asterisk. Granted. Brief your crew on station defense protocols." Korath turned back to the main display. "All response fleet vessels. Launch immediately. Target destination. Helios Prime. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on all hostile AI vessels. Our priority is civilian evacuation and defense of the mining platforms." The response fleet departed in a spectacular display of power. 23 warships accelerated away from Omega-9, their drives creating brilliant streaks of light as they transitioned to faster-than-light travel. On the observation decks, delegates watched with admiration and relief. The crisis would be handled by real military forces. Asterisk. The Steadfast remained docked, its bulk unchanged, its crew seemingly resigned to their secondary role. But on the bridge of the human dreadnought, Captain Cross was reviewing data that none of the other commanders had requested. Helios Prime's orbital mechanics, projected battle zone coordinates, enemy fleet composition analysis, attack vectors and defensive positions. Commander Santis watched her captain work with growing understanding. "Sir, you're not planning station defense, are you?" Cross looked up, a slight smile touching his scarred face. "Commander, inform engineering to prepare for immediate departure. I want every non-essential system shut down. Route all power to engines and forward shields. Sir, the Admiral ordered us to remain on station defense." "The Admiral ordered us to brief our crew on station defense protocols," Cross corrected. "Which I have done. He did not order us to remain docked. Helm, plot a course to Helios Prime." Lieutenant Jackson, the ship's navigator, turned in his seat. The young officer was fresh from the academy, this deployment his first real assignment. "Sir, At our maximum velocity, we'll arrive 13 hours after the response fleet. The battle will be over. At our standard maximum velocity, yes, Cross agreed. He leaned forward in his command chair, his eyes intense. But we're not traveling at standard maximum velocity. Helm. Plot course trajectory using Protocol Titan. Santos drew in a sharp breath. Captain, Protocol Titan has never been tested in actual combat conditions. The simulations showed extreme structural stress. The simulations also showed it would work, Cross replied. The Steadfast was built for this exact scenario. It's time we showed the galaxy why humanity builds ships the way we do. Engineering, this is the captain. Initiate Titan Protocol. Authorization. Cross Delta 7. Deep in the Steadfast's engineering spaces, Chief Engineer Priya Patel received the order with a mixture of excitement and dread. The Titan Protocol had been theoretical until now, a contingency plan developed by human naval architects but never implemented. She looked at her team, saw the same mix of emotions reflected in their faces. "You heard the captain," Patel said, her Hindi accent becoming more pronounced as it always did under stress. Titan Protocol. Shut down life support to all non-essential sections. Reroute all power to the main engines and forward shield generators. Secure all equipment that isn't bolted down, and then secure it again. We're about to find out if human engineering is as good as we think it is. The Steadfast undocked from Omega-9 with none of the ceremony that had accompanied the response fleet's departure. The massive ship pulled away from the station slowly, its bulk seeming to resist the very concept of movement. On the station, a few observers noticed the human vessel departing, but gave it little thought. Perhaps the humans were moving to a different docking position, or conducting some routine maintenance maneuver. Then the Steadfast engines ignited. Not the careful, measured thrust used for normal operations, but a full power burn that turned the rear quarter of the ship into a miniature sun. The dreadnought began to accelerate, slowly at first, then faster. The massive vessel that had taken 47 minutes to dock now cleared the station's safety perimeter in 4 minutes. On Omega-9's traffic control center, alarms began blaring. A Corellian controller stared at his displays in disbelief. The human ship is accelerating beyond rated parameters. Current velocity 0.4 light speed and climbing. 0.5. 0.6. His supervisor rushed to the console. That's impossible. Ships that size cannot achieve those velocities. The structural stress would tear them apart. Somebody forgot to tell the humans that, the controller replied. 0.7 light speed, 0.8. They're still accelerating. Admiral Korath received the report in his ready room aboard the flagship. He stared at the data for a long moment, his scales cycling through colors that suggested profound confusion. "Get me Captain Cross," Korath ordered. The communication channel opened, showing Cross on the Steadfast's bridge. Behind him, the crew worked at their stations with focused intensity. Warning lights flashed across multiple consoles, but the captain appeared calm. "Captain Cross, my traffic control reports your ship is traveling at 0.8 light speed and still accelerating. This exceeds your rated maximum velocity by a factor of 3. Explain." "Admiral, humanity builds heavy," Cross said. "We build slow for normal operations. But when necessary, when lives are at stake, we can move very, very fast. The Steadfast will reach Helios Prime in 4 hours and 37 minutes. We'll arrive 2 hours before the rogue AI fleet can complete its attack on the civilian population centers. Your ship will tear itself apart at those speeds, Korth protested. Respectfully, Admiral, it won't. We've spent 200 years learning how to build vessels that can survive extreme acceleration. The Steadfast is rated for 0.95 light speed sustained velocity. We just don't usually travel that fast because it's hell on the crew and burns fuel at an obscene rate. Cross's expression hardened. But 3 million people are about to die if we don't get there in time. So we're burning the fuel and accepting the discomfort. The channel closed. Korth sat back in his command chair staring at the tactical display. The human ship, previously dismissed as a worthless relic, was now racing toward Helios Prime faster than most modern warships could achieve. The Steadfast would arrive not after the battle, but potentially before the response fleet, depending on how the initial engagement developed. "Get me all ship commanders," Korth ordered. "I think we need to revise our tactical assessments of human capabilities." The response fleet dropped out of FTL travel at the designated coordinates. 6 light minutes from Helios Prime. What they found waiting for them made experienced commanders curse in a dozen languages. The rogue II fleet wasn't the scattered collection of automated ships intelligence had predicted. It was a fully coordinated armada, vessels ranging from fighter-sized drones to massive carrier ships. Each vessel bore the same matte black hull plating. Each moved with perfect synchronization. 400 hostile contacts on sensors, and likely more hidden in Helios Prime's asteroid field. Commander Veeks took tactical command of the engagement, his 4 arms working multiple control stations simultaneously. All ships, combat formation, Delta 7. Zephyrian cruisers take point. Your speed and maneuverability will draw their fire. Korthan destroyers prepare for maximum firepower assault on their capital ships. Velik's bioships focus on fighter suppression. Corellian phase ships, you're our wild cards. Hit them from unexpected angles. The response fleet advanced. The AI Armada responded with cold efficiency. The first salvo came from unexpected directions, missiles that had been waiting in pre-programmed positions. A Zephyrian cruiser took 3 direct hits before its shields could adapt, the elegant vessel's hull rupturing. Atmosphere vented into space along with 24 crew members. Evasive maneuvers, Vex ordered. All ships scatter and regroup at Rally Point Gamma. But the AI fleet had anticipated the maneuver. As the response fleet ships scattered, they found themselves separated and vulnerable. The rogue AI vessels moved with inhuman precision, cutting off retreat paths and isolating targets. A Korthan destroyer found itself surrounded by 50 drone fighters, each one firing in perfect synchronization. The destroyer's shields held for 37 seconds before failing. The ship died in a brilliant explosion that lit up the tactical displays. Admiral Korth watched from his flagship with growing horror. His species' scales had turned a deep black, the color of profound concern. They're learning our tactics in real time. Every maneuver we make, they counter immediately. "Admiral, we need reinforcements," Vex transmitted. His usual confidence had been replaced by the clipped tones of a professional facing a losing battle. "We cannot break through their formation." They adapt faster than we can adjust tactics. Asterisk, another ship died, this time a Velic's bioship that had ventured too close to one of the AI capital vessels. The living ship's regeneration couldn't keep pace with the overwhelming firepower directed at it. The vessel's death scream transmitted across all frequencies, a sound that would haunt the survivors for years to come. All ships, fall back to defensive perimeter around Helios Prime, Korath ordered. We cannot defeat them in open battle, but we can hold position while the evacuation proceeds. The response fleet retreated to Helios Prime's orbital space, forming a defensive shell around the mining platforms. Behind them, 3 million civilians scrambled for evacuation ships that couldn't possibly hold them all. The AI fleet advanced methodically, content to take its time now that the enemy was trapped. On the Steadfast, racing through space at 0.9 light speed, Captain Cross reviewed the battle reports with grim determination. The response fleet was losing, exactly as he had feared. Fast ships with modern weapons, facing an enemy that could outthink and outmaneuver them at every turn. Speed and firepower meant nothing against an opponent that could predict every move. Time to Helios Prime? Cross asked. Asterisk. 42 minutes at current velocity, Lieutenant Jackson reported. Captain, at this speed we won't be able to decelerate in time. We'll shoot past the battle zone. Good, Cross said simply. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Commander Santos, transmit our battle plan to Admiral Korath. Tell him to hold position for 38 more minutes. After that, tell his fleet to scatter and give us room to work. Santos looked at her captain with sudden understanding. Sir, you're going to use the ship as a kinetic weapon. Not exactly, Cross replied. We're going to use the ship as it was designed to be used. Humanity doesn't build fast ships, Commander. We build unstoppable ships. There's a difference, and the AI fleet is about to learn what that means. The Steadfast hurtled through space toward Helios Prime, a 2-million-ton hammer moving at relativistic speeds. The crew endured crushing acceleration, their bodies held in specially designed couches that distributed the forces. Medical teams stood ready to treat inevitable injuries. Everyone knew the risks, and everyone had volunteered anyway, because 3 million people needed saving, and the Steadfast was humanity's answer to impossible situations. Not speed, not elegance, not technological sophistication. Just raw, stubborn, unstoppable momentum, applied with calculated precision. The galaxy had laughed at the slow human warship. In 38 minutes, that laughter would turn to shocked silence. Asterisk the awakening the tactical display on Admiral Korath's flagship showed a situation spiraling toward catastrophe. 17 minutes had passed since the response fleet established defensive positions around Helios Prime. In that time, 2 more ships had been destroyed and 4 others suffered critical damage. The AI fleet pressed forward with mechanical patience, treating the battle like a mathematical equation to be solved through systematic elimination of variables. Corellian phase ship attempted a flanking maneuver, shifting partially out of normal space to bypass the AI formation. The rogue vessels adapted instantly, firing into the dimensional disruption zones where the phase ship would have to rematerialize. The Corellian vessel emerged directly into a kill zone, taking catastrophic damage before it could retreat. Its captain ordered evacuation, and life pods scattered into space like seeds in a storm. Commander Vex coordinated the defense with desperate efficiency. But even his tactical expertise couldn't overcome the fundamental problem. The AI fleet learned faster than organic minds could adapt. Every strategy the response fleet employed was countered within minutes. Every weakness exploited. Every strength neutralized. "Admiral, we cannot hold this position," Vex transmitted, his voice carrying the bitter taste of imminent defeat. "Recommend immediate civilian evacuation to all available transport vessels. We may not save everyone, but we can save some." Before Korath could respond, a new transmission cut across all command frequencies. Captain Cross's voice came through with absolute calm, as if he were discussing routine patrol operations rather than the largest battle in recent galactic history. "Admiral Korath, this is Captain Cross of the ISS Steadfast. We are 31 minutes from engagement range. Recommend all response fleet vessels withdraw to minimum safe distance of 800 kilometers from Helios Prime. Clear all orbital lanes in the combat zone. What we're about to do requires a lot of empty space." Korath's scales flickered through several confused patterns. "Captain Cross, we are barely holding position against the AI fleet. If we withdraw, they will overwhelm the civilian evacuation points within minutes." "They won't have time," Cross replied. "Trust me, Admiral. Pull your ships back. You've done your job by keeping the enemy focused on you. Now let us do ours." There was something in the human captain's voice, a certainty that cut through Korath's doubts. The Admiral had led fleets for 30 years, had learned to recognize the tone of a commander who knew exactly what he was doing. Cross had that tone. "All ships withdraw to 800-kilometer perimeter," Korath ordered. "Maintain defensive formation, but give the human vessel operational space." Commander Vex's protest came immediately. "Admiral, this is madness. One human ship, no matter how fast it's traveling, cannot turn the tide of this battle. We should be reinforcing our defensive line, not abandoning it." "We're not abandoning it, Commander. We're repositioning for a new tactical approach. All ships execute withdrawal now." The response fleet pulled back, opening a massive gap in the defensive perimeter around Helios Prime. The AI fleet detected the movement instantly and surged forward, interpreting it as a retreat. 400 rogue vessels accelerated toward the mining platforms and the vulnerable civilian population, their weapons charging for the final assault dot. Then every sensor in the Helios Prime system detected the Steadfast's approach. The human dreadnought appeared on long-range sensors traveling at 0.94 light speed, its massive bulk creating gravitational distortions that registered across multiple detection systems. Ships that size didn't move at those velocities. The physics seemed impossible, yet the sensor data didn't lie. On the Steadfast's bridge, alarms screamed warnings about structural stress. The ship's hull groaned under forces it was never meant to endure for extended periods. But Chief Engineer Patel's team had done their work well. Every reinforced bulkhead held. Every redundant support structure bore its share of the load. The ship was taking damage, hairline fractures spreading through secondary systems. But nothing critical failed. Captain Cross studied the tactical projection with the focused intensity of a chess master examining a decisive move. The AI fleet had arranged itself in a spherical formation around Helios Prime, a mathematically optimal configuration for overwhelming the fixed position. 400 ships distributed evenly across three-dimensional space, each one positioned to provide covering fire for its neighbors. It was perfect defensive coordination, it was also their fatal weakness. Helm, confirmed trajectory, cross-ordered. Lieutenant Jackson's hands moved across his console with practiced precision. Trajectory confirmed, Captain. We'll enter the combat zone on a spiral approach around Helios Prime. Current velocity will carry us through 43 orbital passes, each one cutting through a different section of the AI formation. Total engagement time, 2 hours, 17 minutes. Weapons status? Asterisk Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun, who had taken over tactical operations, checked her displays. All kinetic rail systems operational. Forward shield array at maximum power. Point defense lasers fully charged. Missile bays loaded with high-velocity penetrators. She paused. Captain, at our current speed, our weapons will hit with forces equivalent to strategic nuclear detonations. We've never fired at these velocities before. I know, Cross said quietly, which is why we're going to be very careful about what we shoot at. Target priority: AI capital ships and carrier vessels. Ignore the fighters unless they directly threaten civilian evacuation routes. Every shot we take has to count because we won't get many opportunities. Commander Santos moved to stand beside the captain's chair, her voice low enough that only Cross could hear. Sir, we're essentially turning the Steadfast into a missile. Once we enter that formation, we can't maneuver, can't dodge. If the AI fleet concentrates fire on us, then we take the hits and keep going, Cross finished. That's what the armor is for, Commander. That's why we built this ship so heavy that everyone else thought we were insane. He raised his voice to address the entire bridge crew. Listen up. What we're about to do has never been attempted in actual combat. The Steadfast was designed for this kind of engagement, but design theory and battlefield reality are different things. Some of you are going to be injured. The G-forces alone will cause problems even with our dampening systems. If anyone wants to transfer to a survival pod before we engage, now is the time. No judgment, no consequences. This is voluntary. Nobody moved. The bridge crew remained at their stations, hands steady on their controls. After a moment, Lieutenant Jackson spoke up, his young voice carrying across the bridge. With respect, Captain, where exactly would we go? If we fail, everyone at Helios Prime dies. If we're going to die, might as well make it count. Cross allowed himself a slight smile. Well said, Lieutenant. All hands secure for combat operations. This is going to be rough. The Steadfast crossed into the Helios Prime combat zone at 0.94 light speed. The AI fleet detected the massive energy signature immediately and recalculated their tactical algorithms. A single heavy vessel moving at relativistic velocity represented a significant threat, but the Rogue A's had faced heavy ships before. They adjusted their formation to concentrate fire on the approaching human dreadnought. Asterisk what they didn't understand, what their programming couldn't comprehend, was that the Steadfast wasn't just a heavy ship. It was a kinetic kill vehicle wrapped in 2 million tons of armor and determination. The difference between those two concepts was about to become catastrophically clear. Asterisk. The first pass happened in 8.3 seconds. The Steadfast entered the AI formation's outer sphere, its forward shields blazing with energy as they intercepted incoming fire. 3 AI destroyers attempted to block the human ship's path, their weapons firing in perfect synchronization. Their combined firepower would have vaporized any conventional warship. The Steadfast absorbed the hits. Forward shields flared white-hot but held. The human dreadnought continued on its trajectory without slowing, without deviating by even a fraction of a degree. At 0.94 light speed, course corrections were impossible anyway. The ship was committed to its path. As the Steadfast passed within 200 meters of the first AI destroyer, Lieutenant Commander Chan fired a single railgun round. The tungsten projectile, already traveling at the ship's velocity, exited the rail gun at an additional 3% of light speed. When it struck the AI destroyer, the resulting energy release could be measured in megatons. The destroyer didn't explode so much as cease to exist, converted to plasma, and scattered atoms in a microsecond. The 2 remaining destroyers attempted to adjust their positions, but they were thinking in terms of normal combat velocities. The Steadfast was past them before their processors could complete the calculations. Chun fired twice more. 2 more plasma events marked where AI ships had been. First pass complete, Jackson reported, his voice shaking slightly from the Gi forces. Structural integrity at 96%. Forward shields regenerating. 3 enemy destroyers eliminated. Beginning second orbital pass, Cross said calmly, as if discussing a training exercise. Helm, maintain current trajectory. Weapons, target the carrier group at coordinates Delta 7. The AI fleet was recalculating. 400 minds working in perfect coordination attempted to develop counter-strategies. They spread their formation, increasing the gaps between ships to reduce the effectiveness of the human vessel's kinetic strikes. They positioned their capital ships behind protective screens of smaller vessels. They calculated intercept trajectories and prepared concentrated fire zones. None of it mattered. The Steadfast's trajectory was predetermined, calculated by human minds, and executed with mechanical precision. Every orbital pass had been planned weeks in advance, every firing solution pre-programmed. The AI fleet was reacting to the human ship's actions, but those actions had been decided before the battle even began. Second pass. The Steadfast swept through a cluster of AI fighter-class vessels. Point defense lasers fired in rapid sequence, each shot precisely aimed despite the incredible velocity. 12 fighters died in 3 seconds, their hulls pierced by weapons that normally struggled to track fast-moving targets. At 0.94 light speed, the Steadfast wasn't trying to track anything. It was the targets that had to worry about getting out of the way. Third pass brought the human dreadnought through the AI carrier group. These were the largest vessels in the rogue fleet, massive automated factories that produced the fighter and destroyer-class ships. Each carrier was protected by layered shields and thick armor. Under normal circumstances, they required sustained bombardment from multiple warships to destroy. Chen fired 4 missiles, each one a high-velocity penetrator designed specifically for this engagement. The missiles didn't have guidance systems because they didn't need them. At the velocities involved, ballistic trajectories were more reliable than active guidance. The missiles streaked toward their targets faster than the AI vessels could track. The first carrier's shields flared and failed under the kinetic impact. The missile punched through 2 meters of armor plating and detonated inside the carrier's main fabrication chamber. The explosion tore the massive vessel in half. The second and third carriers suffered similar fates. The fourth carrier attempted an emergency maneuver, trying to dodge despite the missile already being in flight. The maneuver only ensured that the missile struck its engineering section instead of its fabrication bay. The result was the same: total destruction. 4 carriers eliminated, Chun reported. Her voice carried a note of fierce satisfaction. AI fleet coordination is degrading. They're having trouble maintaining formation cohesion. Cross watched the tactical display as the AI fleet attempted to reform. With their carriers destroyed, the rogue vessels could no longer produce reinforcements. Their numbers were now fixed at 363 ships, and that number was dropping with each pass the Steadfast made. 4th pass, 5th pass, 6th pass. The human dreadnought carved through the AI formation like a bullet through paper. Each pass eliminated between 3 and 8 enemy vessels. The Steadfast took damage in return, the AI fleet learning to concentrate fire on predicted trajectory points. But the human ship's armor absorbed punishment that would have destroyed lighter vessels. On the bridge, the crew endured hell. The constant G-forces exhausted everyone despite the acceleration couches. Warning alarms created a constant symphony of distress. Damage reports flooded in from all sections. But nobody abandoned their post, and nobody suggested retreat. Deep in the engineering spaces, Chief Patel and her team performed miracles. When a coolant line ruptured in the forward shield generators, they rerouted power through backup systems within 90 seconds. When hull breaches threatened to decompress 3 sections, they sealed emergency bulkheads and kept working. When structural stress cracked a primary support beam, they reinforced it with emergency supports while the ship continued its high-velocity passes. Engineering to bridge, Patel's voice came through the comm system, audible strain coloring her normally cheerful tone. Captain, we're holding together but barely. Hull integrity is down to 72%. We've got fractures in the primary keel structure. Recommend we reduce velocity after completing the 20th pass. Negative, Cross replied. We maintain velocity until the AI capital ships are eliminated. How long can you hold us together? There was a pause. Then Patel laughed, a sound somewhere between hysteria and determination. Honestly, Captain, I have no idea. The ship is operating beyond rated parameters. We're in uncharted territory. But if you're asking if we'll keep her flying, then yes. Yes, we will. That's all I needed to hear, Chief. Bridge out. The AI fleet attempted one final coordinated assault. On the Steadfast's 23rd orbital pass, every remaining AI vessel fired simultaneously at a single point in space. A predicted intercept location where the human ship would be in 4.7 seconds. It was perfect calculation, perfect coordination, perfect execution. It was also predicted by Percy. The Steadfast's tactical AI. The human-designed artificial intelligence had been running probability scenarios for every possible enemy response. when the AI fleet began positioning for the coordinated strike. Percy recognized the pattern and adjusted the Steadfast's trajectory by 0.003 degrees. The massed fire of 300 AI vessels filled space with energy and metal, creating a kill zone that could have vaporized a small moon. The Steadfast passed 90 meters above the kill zone, so close that the edge effects washed over the lower hull, but far enough to avoid the concentrated destruction. Enemy coordination broken, Shan reported. They've exhausted their primary weapons in that salvo. Reload times vary, but we have a 40-second window before they can fire again. Weapons free, Cross ordered. All batteries, maximum rate of fire. Target everything that moves. The Steadfast unleashed everything it had. Rail guns that had been firing single precision shots now fired in rapid sequence. Point defense lasers swept across multiple targets. Missile bays emptied, launching every remaining penetrator. For 40 seconds, the human dreadnought became a storm of destruction, trading precision for overwhelming firepower. When the salvo ended, 97 AI vessels had been destroyed or crippled beyond operation. The survivors scattered, their coordination shattered, their tactical algorithms unable to process the level of destruction they'd just witnessed. Admiral Korath watched from his flagship in stunned silence. The tactical display showed a situation that had reversed completely in under an hour. The AI fleet that had been on the verge of victory was now broken and retreating. The human ship, the vessel everyone had mocked as too slow and too old, had single-handedly turned the tide of battle. "Get me Captain Cross," Korath ordered. The communication channel opened, showing Cross's bridge. The human captain looked exhausted, his uniform stained with sweat and blood from a cut above his eyebrow. Behind him, crew members slumped at their stations, several being treated by medical personnel. But they were alive, and they had one asterisk. "Captain Cross," Korath said, his scales displaying colors that represented profound respect. "I owe you an apology. I owe humanity an apology. We dismissed your ship and your capabilities without understanding what we were looking at." "No apology necessary, Admiral," Cross replied. "You worked with the information you had. You couldn't have known about Berserker-class vessels because we've kept them classified. Most of the galaxy doesn't understand our military doctrine." "Berserker-class?" Korath asked. "It's what we call ships like the Steadfast," Commander Satis explained, moving into view of the camera. "Heavy dreadnoughts designed for a specific tactical doctrine we call the Tortoise Protocol. Other species build fast ships for offensive operations. Humanity builds heavy ships for defensive operations. We're not trying to chase enemies. We're trying to protect things that can't protect themselves." Cross leaned forward in his command chair. "Admiral, every human colony, every mining station, every settlement is a fixed point that can't retreat from danger. So we developed a doctrine specifically for defending fixed positions. We build ships so heavy they seem slow under normal operations. But when necessary, when lives are at stake, we can accelerate those heavy ships to velocities that turn them into kinetic weapons. Mass times velocity equals momentum. And momentum, properly applied, is devastatingly effective." "But the cost," Korath protested. "Your ship has taken enormous damage. Your crew is exhausted. This cannot be a sustainable tactical approach. It's not meant to be sustainable, Cross agreed. It's meant to be effective when everything else has failed. Yes, the Steadfast will need months of repairs. Yes, my crew will need medical treatment and rest. But 3 million civilians are alive because we were willing to pay that cost. A new voice joined the conversation. Commander Vex appeared on a split screen, his 4 arms crossed in a gesture of formal respect. Captain Cross, I called your ship pathetic. I said humans didn't belong in real battles. I was wrong. Profoundly, completely wrong. What you did today, ... That was warfare at a level I've never witnessed. Thank you, Commander, Cross said. But we didn't do this alone. Your fleet held the line until we arrived. You kept the AI fleet focused on you, prevented them from attacking the civilian evacuation points. We provided the hammer blow, but you provided the anvil. That's how combined arms operations are supposed to work. The Steadfast began the long, careful process of deceleration. It would take 38 hours to shed the velocity the ship had built up, and the crew faced another day and a half of crushing G-forces. But they had time now. The AI fleet was scattered and running. The civilian evacuation proceeded unhindered. The crisis was over. In the aftermath, as repair ships and medical transports arrived at Helios Prime, the story of the Steadfast's charge spread across the galactic community. Ships from 40 species had witnessed the battle, had seen sensor data that seemed impossible. The slow human warship that had been mocked for its outdated design and pathetic velocity had saved 3 million lives through tactics that defied conventional military wisdom. A week later, Captain Cross attended a formal ceremony aboard Station Omega-9. The same observation deck that had hosted mocking laughter now held a very different gathering. Admiral Korath presented the Steadfast's crew with the Galactic Defense Initiative's highest honor, the Star of Valor. Every crew member who had endured the Berserker run received individual recognition. Ambassador Vex approached Cross after the ceremony, his translucent features showing colors of genuine humility. Captain, I owe you personal apology. I called your ship a museum piece. I suggested humanity didn't understand modern warfare. I was speaking from ignorance. You were speaking from experience, Cross corrected gently. You'd never seen ships like ours in action because we don't deploy them often. The Tortoise Protocol is a last resort tactic. It's what we do when everything else has failed and innocent lives hang in the balance. Still, I should not have mocked what I didn't understand. Vex gestured toward the docking bay where the Steadfast sat in repair cradles, swarms of workers addressing the damage it had sustained. How many more ships like the Steadfast does humanity have? Cross smiled slightly. That's classified. But I can tell you this. Humanity has been preparing for the worst-case scenario for 2 centuries. We've watched species rise and fall based on their military capabilities. We've studied every major conflict in recent galactic history, and we've learned one fundamental lesson. Speed isn't everything. Sometimes you need something that can take a punch and keep moving forward. Something too heavy to push aside, too stubborn to stop. Commander Vex joined the conversation, his posture respectful. Captain, my government has requested technical briefings on human defensive doctrine. We're reconsidering our own shipbuilding philosophies. Would humanity be willing to share information? Within limits, Cross replied. We're happy to discuss general principles. The specific technical details of Berserker-class vessels will remain classified, but we can certainly talk about the underlying philosophy. Actually, I think a lot of species could benefit from incorporating some defensive doctrine into their military strategies. Not every situation calls for speed and maneuverability. The conversation continued, professional respect replacing the earlier mockery. Other commanders approached with questions about momentum warfare, kinetic tactics, and defensive operations. Cross answered what he could, deflected what he couldn't, and throughout it all maintained the humble professionalism that characterized human military culture. Later that evening, Cross stood in the observation deck alone, watching the stars. Commander Santos found him there, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She offered one to her captain, and they stood in comfortable silence for several minutes. They're calling us heroes, Santos said finally. The Steadfast is famous across half the galaxy now. Every species wants to know how we did what we did. Fame is temporary, Cross replied. What matters is that we did our job. 3 million people went home to their families because we were willing to do something everyone else thought was impossible. You think they'll stop laughing at our ships now? Cross considered the question, sipping his coffee. Probably not. Humans will always build differently than other species. We'll always prioritize defense over offense, protection over projection. And species with different doctrines will always question our choices. That's fine. Let them laugh. Let them doubt. When the crisis comes, when innocent people need protection, we'll be there. That's what matters. Santos nodded slowly. The engineers say the Steadfast will need 4 months of repairs before she's operational again. Chief Patel is already submitting requisition orders for new hull plating. Good. And the crew? Tired, bruised, proud. Santos smiled. Nobody wants to transfer off. If anything, we've got a waiting list of personnel requesting assignment to the Steadfast. Cross raised an eyebrow. Really? Really? Turns out people want to serve on the ship that proved everyone wrong. The slow warship that moved fast when it mattered. The old relic that saved 3 million lives. Santos looked at her captain. You built something special here, sir. Not just a ship, but a philosophy. A way of thinking about warfare that prioritizes what's worth protecting instead of what's worth destroying. Humanity's gift to the galaxy, Cross said quietly. Not speed, not advanced weapons, not tactical brilliance. Just stubborn determination to protect those who can't protect themselves. Even if it means taking mockery and doubt. Even if it means being the slow ship in a fast galaxy. They stood together watching the stars, 2 officers aboard a damaged ship that had changed the way an entire galaxy thought about warfare. The Steadfast floated in its repair cradles, scarred and battered but intact. A testament to human engineering and human values. The slow warship that everyone had mocked. The vessel they thought was harmless dot, it had been their biggest mistake, and their most important lesson, asterisk.